Decoding mainstream media. I'm going to begin by talking about like wrestling, because when I was a child I used to watch wrestling entertainment quite a lot, pro wrestling. Obviously being a big fan of like WWF, SmackDown, Raw. I'm going to go into a bit of some inner standings and overstandings of different characters. There's been obviously, as well as just good guys and bad guys, there's been dark characters, there's been a lot of heroic characters, there's been a lot of twists and turns with characters. They've turned heel, went from good to bad, and vice versa. And there's been people like Mick Foley who have changed character quite often. So Mick Foley, the ones I know of were Dude Love, which is like, he was like a hippie kind of guy. He's been Cactus Jack, who is kind of the checkered shirt wearing cowboy kind of guy. And he's been Mankind, who is obviously like, Mankind was this kind of like twisted, almost psychotic character who wore a mask because he was really unstable and scared to go out. And if you really look into Mr. Socko, you'll realise that he used to like use the mandible claw with his sock on, and I think it was like basically this weird shy guy is using this Socko. Well, firstly, Socko sounds a lot like Psycho, but not only that, I think the sock is like a symbol for a dirty sock from this guy that probably like jerks off in his sock, and he's all twisted and weird, and then he forces it down the throats of his foes or his opponents. So yeah, Mankind was one of the rare kind of guys, well, Mick Foley, whereas he went through many different characters, designs, but you also get characters that represent more. If you look into it, really, they represent more than just these happy-go-lucky characters. For example, Degeneration X or DX, because obviously I'm like a 90s kid, so I can talk more about that than like the older stuff or even the more modern stuff, because I kind of like fell off the bandwagon a little bit. But Degeneration X, well, when you're a child, you kind of understand it as this clan of people that are making hand gestures and quite innocent, like green and black colours. But if you look into it, well, D and X is like, D is almost like a skull, X is like crossbones, so you can say like skull and crossbones symbolism there. I don't really know the colours of green and black, why that would be significant, but let's move on to how they kind of went suck it. Basically they're just saying, yeah, suck their you know what. So there's kind of like, there's a lot of like lust and sexual messaging there. Obviously like the adults can understand it, the children don't really understand. If it was triple F, it would be 666, which is obviously, it was used as, they say it was the devil's number. It originates from Nero, who was like kind of one of the old gods of war. I don't know exactly, I can't really remember exactly, but Triple Eight, and he did this spraying thing when he sprayed like his water, and Lucifer was often known as someone who would spray water. I don't know why, it's kind of like a rebellious thing or whatever, but it's almost like the water of love, that life that God gives us, he's like mocking it and spitting it away kind of thing. It's almost like, I suppose that's what it means. But no, so Triple HD, Big Bad Show, that's his music, and it's kind of like they're building up to something. And I mean, people would look into the big show being like 9/11 as the big event where things are going to change, which obviously, if you believe in 9/11 conspiracy theories or not is up to you, but there's a lot of evidence of kind kind of codes they're putting out in the media. For example, like in Rugrats in Paris, although it's not Rugrats in New York City, so they're not going to put it plainly as that. One of the opening scenes is Chucky dancing, and he clearly says in a weird frantic state 9/11, and there's some other symbolism within that movie as well, and there's a lot of dark symbolism, like it's basically a paedophile's it's a paedophile's eye candy with like Tommy's nappies falling down all the time and all that. So yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin is another interesting character. He started off with long hair, stunning Stone Cold back in the 80s and stuff, and then he moved on to this bold guy. What I'm interested in is the skull symbolism, because sometimes it was like a skull with a red eye, which is a lot like Terminator. And Terminator represents not just like robots and artificial intelligence, but Terminator represents like transhumanist agendas. And if you look at Stone Cold, he used to wear these big metal knee pads. You could compare that to like exoskeletal military technologies and stuff that they develop. Obviously, like, I'm not all against transhumanists, because I believe we're going that way anyway with wearable technologies like Google Glass and augmented realities and virtual reality are becoming big things now. To him, so The Rock was the biggest icon of the 90s. There's no question about it. The Rock. I think if you look deeply, if you look into Obama's rise to presidency, I would argue that American popular cultural media actually paved the way for a black president. And if you look into, for example, the Dave Chappelle show, he was offered a lot of money in the range of like $5 million or something like that, maybe even more. I think it might have been 50. You can look into that, to basically not sell his soul, but he was diminishing the organicness of his show and changing it into something which would ingratiate and kind of advertise an upstanding black citizen as a, basically to imprint in the minds of the American public that a black president could be a good thing. And obviously, about 6 years later, when Obama was running for office, that would have boosted him. But obviously, Chappelle went a different direction. Some people think he was cloned. Some people, there's a lot of interesting and scary, fascinating theories out there about Dave Chappelle. But basically, who The Rock was, he was also from Hawaii, like Obama. He was kind of like of brown skin, like Obama. He was very charismatic, like Obama. But obviously, that you can look into that too deeply, because you can look into anything too deeply, but it only becomes like too deep and too heavy and too crazy if you choose it to be. If you're used to diving deep into the rabbit hole all the time, it's perfectly normal. It's like if you're used to swimming, dolphins, they swim up and down, they dive all day. You don't see a dolphin suddenly like being scared of diving, you know what I mean? Because that's just in their nature. And some people that look into conspiracies and they overstand and they really research media, it's perfectly normal for them to get multiple meanings and start connecting the dots and researching layers. This is what gives us a greater understanding of world events without necessarily having to even watch the news or have to read a book. If you're really at the vibration where you're used to delving deep and understanding truths in multiple layers, it's perfectly normal. Beef with the company. So I grew up watching it and I love it. My favourite wrestlers were Bill Goldberg and Sting. And you could code Goldberg with something like the Federal Reserve and gold standard. He's like a rare commodity, Goldberg. He's crushing. You could represent that as like when Goldberg's winning, the gold standard's winning, which basically gold standard is how the American monetarized, they related money to gold. Gold is power. Gold is the currency, whereas money's relation to gold is relative. So obviously, the Federal Reserve were spending money like toilet paper back in the day, printing money like toilet paper rather, and they ruined the American economy. And they still kind of, they funded the CIA and everything else, and they kind of like, there's a lot of hope for the future in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and stuff, but obviously like the powers of the CIA and FBI, the Federal Reserve, the banking systems, Goldman Sachs, there's much to research about that, how you could argue that they orchestrated the financial crisis, and basically they put America in a tough position for a lot of people. But enough about that, because I'm talking about wrestling here. So Goldberg is my favourite. Sting, I liked Sting because he was almost an exact representation of The Crow, which is a film by Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee. Unfortunately, he was shot by a dummy blank or some kind of blockage in a mock gun, came out of the gun and punctured his rib. So this was like a big loss to the movie world, because if you ever watch a Brandon Lee movie, he's not only an expert martial artist, but he's a man who's in his heart. You get actors that are connected with their heart, and you can just tell they're not really phonies. And Bruce Lee was never really a phony either. He was a loving, philosophical, hard-working individual. So we need more people like that, and I'm sure there's going to be some more superstars in the future that can pave the way and inspire the youth. But if you look at The Rock and John Cena, they're guys that have went to movies. I mean, The Rock's obviously a big movie star now, one of the biggest in the world, and he's still kind of. Do your own research on The Rock. You can do your own research on The Rock. If you look at the start of his movies, The Scorpion King, and The Mummy and all that. So the Scorpion is like, if you look at Sting, it's almost like The Rock was stung at that point, stung by the movie bug, and then he went off into movies, barely ever returned to pro wrestling. But John Cena, I don't think John Cena is the best actor, but I think he's a very inspiring guy that's been he's been up and down, he's been on a roller coaster throughout the years, and he's lost fans and he's gained fans and he's got a new generation of fans. But and then there's people like The Undertaker. There's a lot of dark symbology in wrestling as well. There's people like the Apocalypse, this group where they had like the Eye of Ra, and red and black kind of represents hell. There's people like Bray Wyatt, who originally was wearing, his clan would wear like goat masks, and he does all this strange stuff with his body. But I think I like Bray Wyatt because he's quite original and he came up with his own character. There's just basically wrestling. A lot of characters represent political agendas and current world things that are happening in the world, whether they be people or agendas, companies, political agendas, or whether they just represent comedy and they could be mocking a real person in the world. This is the kind of the levels that you can understand this in. But the thing is that the wrestling characters and the wrestling story, it always changes, not just within the company of like creative people, it changes in regards to the world as well. So if you really put the time in and you connect to the right vibration, do the research, inner search and over search, you can begin to understand and overstand the situation. So that's a little bit about wrestling. I'm going to leave it there today. I've babbled on a bit. So much love, full gratitude. This is Frano, over and out.